The economy is made up of real people doing real stuff, and it affects everything. Which you obviously know since you're a real person doing real stuff. Marketplace is here to help you get smart about everything beyond the what of the day's business and economic news. We dig into the how and the why with the real people driving our economy. From big tech and interest rates to small businesses and what's happening at the Fed. Marketplace breaks it all down so you don't have to. Listen to Marketplace wherever you get your podcasts.
And away we go. Episode 114 of the Al Galdi podcast. It is Tuesday, August 3rd, 2021, the first full day of NBA free agency this offseason, as things are happening as I speak right now regarding the Wizards. We are on Spencer Dinwiddie watch. More on that in a few minutes. This Tuesday, August 3rd, also marks the first day of padded practice for the Washington football team at training camp this year. Things be getting physical in Ashburn later on this Tuesday. You know, it has been a chippy training camp for the Washington football team so far. All kinds of trash talking. Ron Rivera multiple times has talked about having to talk to his guys about their behavior. That's good. I like that. There's an edge to this team. There's some Neanderthal to this team. Nothing wrong with that. I have a lot for you on the show on the Washington football team. There will be some COVID-19 player vaccination talk, but not much. That topic only came up briefly during Ron Rivera's post-training camp practice press conference on Monday. We have a lot of football, pure, unadulterated football to discuss, including Ron on two linebackers in Cole Holcomb and Khaleke Hudson drawing attention in camp. Ron on the latest in the quarterback competition, and we'll do a deep dive on Antonio Gibson. Ron on Monday got asked about Gibson a bunch. Gibson on Monday did a post-practice press conference of his own. Is this coming season going to be the big step forward season for Gibson that so many are anticipating? Is Antonio Gibson poised to become Washington's version of Christian McCaffrey, a dual threat running back, the likes of which you could argue that Washington has never had? In other words, a guy capable of a 1,000-yard season. Yeah, I said it. 1,000 rushing yards, 1,000 receiving yards. McCaffrey did that in the 2019 regular season during, Ron's final season as Carolina Panthers head coach. Is Antonio Gibson pulling a McCaffrey, a 1,000-yard season, or even teasing that, a legitimate possibility in the 2021 regular season? We also have some perhaps telling comments from William Jackson III on Monday to chew on. Big night at Nationals Park on Monday night. The Nats debut of Josiah Gray. He did well. The Nats bullpen did not do well. I'll talk Nats later in the show. And I'll talk Orioles late in the show, as they did what I love for them to do, and that is beat up on the New York Yankees. An Orioles win at the Yankees on Monday night. That has not happened often, so if you're an O's fan, you take it when you can get it. You can tweet me at Al Galdi. You can email me, the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com, including if you would like to become a sponsor of the Al Galdi podcast. If you would like for the power of the pod to work for you, to grow your business or practice, especially as we approach football season, and in some ways already are in football season. You know, advertising on the Al Galdi podcast works. Just ask John Granlund, a.k.a. John G., a.k.a. the master of Commission Flex. He's due to be listing homes for Brian S. and Lou D., two big-time listeners of the Al Galdi podcast. They heard about John Granlund via this podcast. So shout out to my guys, my homies, Brian S. and Lou D., two intelligent people, two DMV warriors. And if you want to join the movement that is this podcast and benefit like John Granlund benefits, hit us up, the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Email from Coach Christopher Lunn of Walt Whitman High School. You know, I've said it. We have all kinds of impressive people who listen to this podcast. Actually, by definition, you just listening to this podcast makes you impressive. But anyway, Coach Christopher Lunn of Walt Whitman High School, he has been Whitman's varsity men's basketball head coach for a decade and a half, has had a dominant run, very respected in the DMV basketball scene. Writes Coach Al, down in Aruba for the week, pumped to listen to all of the WFT news while taking in the white sand and clear water from my beach chair, bringing the pod to the Caribbean, ... listening flex. I love it. Coach Lunn. See, that's a smart coach right there, channeling his inner Coach Rivera and going with the listening flex.
Position flex.
Yes, Ron, just like position flex. But that right there is why Coach Lunn has had the success that he's had. That kind of mastery of the situation. So I am recording this right now at, let me check my phone, 1:36 a.m. on Tuesday. As I speak, we have multiple reports that the Wizards, I said Wizards.
The damn Washington Wizards.
Yes, the Wizards are nearing agreement on a deal for Spencer Dinwiddie of the Brooklyn Nets. NBA free agency started on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, as that was when teams were allowed to start negotiating with free agents, because we all know that NBA teams would never, ever, ever begin negotiating with free agents prior to the time at which teams are allowed to negotiate with free agents. The reporting for days has been that the Wizards would be in on Dinwiddie. I talked about Dinwiddie at length on Monday's show, episode 113, and sure enough, it looks like the Wizards are getting Dinwiddie. Tweet from ESPN NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski at 12:16 a.m. on Tuesday. Free agent guard Spencer Dinwiddie is nearing a deal with the Washington Wizards, sources tell ESPN. Tweet from NBA insider Jake Fisher of Bleacher Report at 12:30 a.m. on Tuesday. Quote, Spencer Dinwiddie is nearing an agreement with the Washington Wizards that will pay roughly $60 million over 3 years per league sources. Talks are still ongoing in their Los Angeles meeting, end quote. So it's not often that as I tape this podcast, news is breaking, but such is the case here very early on this Tuesday morning. The presumption is that this will be a sign and trade. We just don't know the details right now, though, so I will reserve doing a whole segment on this until we know what the Wizards are giving up. It would be silly to sound off on this without knowing what the Wizards are giving up. I mean, I guess it is possible the Wizards are signing Dinwiddie as just a straight unrestricted free agent. We'll see. We just don't know enough right now. I will say getting Spencer Dinwiddie isn't enough to transform the Wizards into a top 3 seed in the Eastern Conference, and that needs to be the goal. Get to being a top 3 seed in your conference. Otherwise, you basically have no shot at an NBA title, and that's what this needs to be about, building a true NBA title contender. Enough of this with the Wizards having not gotten past the second round in the NBA playoffs since 1979. So I think about this, and I'm like, it can't be that Bradley Beal is your number one, and Spencer Dinwiddie, who, oh, by the way, is coming off a torn right ACL, is your number 2, and that's the plan. There needs to be more to the plan. I suspect that there is more to the plan. But Dinwiddie can score. There's no doubt about that. Like, Dinwiddie can play. I just would like to know what else is going to be happening here with our Wizards. So hopefully the next time we converse on this podcast, we have a better idea of what's going on here. I tend to think that we will. It was interesting following NBA free agency on Monday night. A number of point guards quickly came off the free agent market on Monday evening per reports. The New Orleans Pelicans agreed with the Charlotte Hornets on a sign and trade for Devontae Graham. That was notable because the Pelicans reportedly had been in on Spencer Dinwiddie. Lonzo Ball agreed on a big money deal with the Chicago Bulls. Derrick Rose agreed to re-sign with the New York Knicks. Corey Joseph agreed on a deal to re-sign with the Detroit Pistons. We knew that the Wizards needed a point guard. The Wizards, right, reportedly, it's not official yet, are trading Russell Westbrook to the Los Angeles Lakers. But that's the thing, like, among the things coming back to the Wizards from the Lakers, right, are 3 players in Kyle Kuzma, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and Montrezl Harrell. So are those guys going back to the Brooklyn Nets in this sign and trade for Spencer Dinwiddie? Like, again, we just don't know. We need to know more. But the Wizards need point guards here. Westbrook is being traded. Among the Wizards' unrestricted free agents are 2 point guards, Raul Neto and Ish Smith. Oh, by the way, the Wizards on Monday evening did lose one of their unrestricted free agents. Alex Len reportedly agreed on a 2-year deal with the Sacramento Kings. Robin Lopez is an unrestricted free agent for the Wizards as well. So lots to sort through with the Wiz as NBA free agency is up and running. But yes, as we speak right now, very early on this Tuesday morning, things are happening with our Wizards.
The damn Washington Wizards.
Yes, that team. Exactly. All right, on to the Washington football team. All right, so 2021 Washington football team training camp now is at the team facility in Ashburn, of having been in Richmond for the first 5 days, last Tuesday through Saturday. We on Monday had the first training camp practice of this year's camp in Ashburn. We on Tuesday will have the first padded practice of Washington's training camp this year. Let us get the COVID-19 stuff out of the way, and then we'll do a ton on actual football. So when we last left you on As the COVID Turns, we had 7 Washington football team players on the reserve COVID-19 list, including Brandon Sheriff, Curtis Samuel, Cornelius Lucas, Daron Payne, and Matt Ioannidis. But we also had Washington's player vaccination rate for COVID-19 having increased by quite a bit. It's interesting what has and has not gotten attention over these last few days. Now, on this podcast, we talked about both items, but elsewhere, I feel like you're only getting one part of the story. So the one part of the story you continue to get is that Washington has placed 7 players on the reserve COVID-19 list. But also going on right now is Washington's player vaccination rate for COVID-19 having gone up by quite a bit. Washington football team insider Nikki Javala of the Washington Post on Saturday afternoon tweeted that Washington's COVID-19 vaccination rate among players was at least 70%. It was just 2 Thursdays ago, July 22nd, that Washington football team insider J.P. Finley of NBC Sports Washington tweeted that Washington's COVID-19 vaccination rate among players was between 50 and 60%. And it was just on July 16th that we had multiple reports that Washington still had a COVID-19 player vaccination rate of less than 50%. So that's progress, right? From less than 50% to between 50 and 60% to, as of Saturday, at least 70%. And Ron Rivera, at his post-training camp practice press conference on Saturday, said that more players were set to get vaccinated for COVID-19 on Sunday. So this was Ron at his post-training camp practice press conference on Monday on if he got the turnout at the vaccine setup on Sunday that he was hoping for.
We're very pleased with what we did yesterday. It was a good step in the right direction, and we're continuing to trend up.
And that was it from Ron on that. He did not get asked much more about the COVID-19 player vaccination stuff, and I don't think that any tears were shed over Ron not getting asked much more about the COVID-19 player vaccination stuff. The only other COVID-19 related question for Ron on Monday, and this is worth noting and filing away, Ron was asked if whether a player is vaccinated for COVID-19 will enter into whether to keep that player on the season opening roster.
No, because again, we know we're going to have guys coming into the regular season that are unvaccinated. And so if that's the case, if it comes down to it, we're going to take who we think is the best player that gives us a chance to win. But they'll also make sure they understand that the protocols are real. The what we're going to have them do, the masking, the social distancing, the grab and go, they're going to have to do it. The contact tracing, all that. And that's just the way it's going to be. If you're vaccinated, great. And if you're not, you're following the protocols to the dot. The league came out with its penalties. We're going to follow those to the T. And that's just, as I said, that's the way it will be for us.
Hearing Ron say, quote, we know that we're going to have guys coming into the regular season that are unvaccinated, end quote. That goes back to what Ron said at his post-practice press conference on Saturday when he said that some guys are dug in and aren't changing. Ron knows that he isn't winning this battle with everyone, maybe even not with most players. And I have had it suggested to me that Ron should just start cutting guys who refuse to get vaccinated for COVID-19. No, he shouldn't, okay? You can't do that. I mean, what if Chase Young and Montez Sweat refuse to get vaccinated for COVID-19? You're going to cut those guys? No freaking way. You can't make people do this. You shouldn't make people do this. You shouldn't guilt trip people into doing this. You should explain to people the science behind doing this. You should explain the actual facts to people who have questions about doing this or who are resistant toward doing this. But you can't force people to take shots that people don't want to take, point blank, period. Well, a man who I know can cut through the discourse and the politics when they come to the COVID-19 pandemic and give things to you straight is Dr. Matthew Mintz. Ron Rivera should have Dr. Mintz talk to the Washington football team and answer any questions that players may have. Ron should have Dr. Mintz talk to Dan Snyder and set a few things straight with him. But anyway, Dr. Mintz is an internal medicine and primary care physician who is rated as a top doctor by both Washingtonian and Bethesda magazines. If you need a regular doctor, Dr. Mintz is accepting patients in his concierge practice. Dr. Mintz also offers something very special and groundbreaking in the treatment of depression called Spravato. Spravato is a new FDA-approved medication shown to be safe and effective in patients with what is called treatment-resistant depression. You see, while most patients respond to traditional prescription medications for depression, up to 1/3 of patients do not improve even after 2 or more medications. This is called treatment-resistant depression, which can be debilitating for patients and lead to thoughts of suicide, even suicide attempts. If you or someone you know is dealing with treatment-resistant depression, understand it doesn't have to be this way. Spravato is a nose spray administered in a doctor's office. Unlike most pills that can take weeks to work, Spravato can start working right after the first treatment, and because Spravato is approved by the FDA, Spravato is covered by most insurance companies. Dr. Mintz will work with your insurance company to make sure that Spravato is approved, and understand that for most patients, the cost of each dose is only $10. Yeah, $10. Totally worth it to get your life back. And for patients with Medicare, Medicaid, or Kaiser, or with an insurance that doesn't cover Spravato, Dr. Mintz is also able to administer nasal ketamine, a nose spray similar to Spravato, and that treatment should cost less than $10 per treatment, even without insurance. Spravato can only be administered in authorized healthcare settings, and Dr. Matthew Mintz is one of the few physicians in the DMV who is authorized to administer Spravato in his private Bethesda office. Dr. Mintz and his staff will monitor you closely throughout your treatment to ensure your comfort and safety. You can find out more by going to drmintz.com, that's drmintz.com, and clicking on the Spravato link. But if you, a friend, or a loved one have depression that is not getting better with traditional treatments or medications, there's no need to continue to suffer. Contact Dr. Mintz to find out if Spravato may be right for you. You can call Dr. Mintz's office at 855-646-8963. That's 855-646-8963. And make sure when you call to mention this podcast, the Al Galdi podcast, because doing so will get you $50 off your initial consultation. That phone number again, 855-646-8963. There's no need to suffer from treatment-resistant depression. Contact Dr. Matthew Mintz and tell him that Al Galdi sent you. All right, some notable Washington football team players were not practicing fully on Monday due to injury. Kyle Allen, due to tweaking his surgically repaired left ankle on Saturday. Jonathan Allen, dealing with a hamstring. Jamin Davis, dealing with an eye infection of getting poked in the eye. That does not sound fun. What is it with DC athletes and their eyes, by the way? Rui Hachimura of the Wizards missed time this past season due to conjunctivitis, and now Jamin Davis is dealing with an eye infection of getting poked in the eye. Anyway, while we're talking Jamin, Washington's linebacking core came up a decent amount during Ron Rivera's post-practice press conference on Monday. No linebacker was better for Washington last season than Cole Holcomb, who, by the way, is sporting the mullet to end all mullets in training camp. For those of you who watch Narcos, if you remember Ramon and his mullet, Cole Holcomb's mullet is Ramon-like. Okay, you have to watch Narcos to get that. But if you watch Narcos, you get that. Anyway, Ron on Monday on the kind of camp that Holcomb is having.
Oh, I think he's had an excellent camp. He really has done a nice job. You see his retention from last year has been excellent. Last year, I don't know if you remember, but he missed about, a week and a half. Now he's back out there and running around doing things that we hope he could do, and he's done a great job. He really has.
Yeah, Holcomb's biggest problem last season was injury. He, in the 2020 regular season, played in just 11 games. He missed 4 consecutive games early in the season, weeks 2 through 5, due to a knee injury, and then missed a loss to the Seattle Seahawks at FedEx Field in Week 15 due to a concussion. So, he wasn't available as much as you would have wanted last year, but otherwise, Holcomb had a good season. Holcomb in the 2020 regular season had an overall grade per Pro Football Focus of 72.0. That's not outstanding, but, that's decent. I mean, Washington's linebacker core was not lights out last season. Holcomb, to me, was the best of the bunch. And Holcomb, in case you don't know, a Jay Gruden draft pick. Jay advocated strongly for Washington to take Holcomb, and he has proven to be a nice find. Washington took Holcomb in the 5th round of the 2019 NFL Draft out of North Carolina. Holcomb and Matt Ioannidis, 2 day 3 draft finds for Washington that are due to Jay Gruden. Jay had his faults, but he had an eye for talent, especially defensive talent, interestingly enough. Another linebacker who came up during Ron's post-practice press conference on Monday was Khaleke Hudson, who has been getting a look at the Buffalo nickel position. That is essentially a safety who serves as the 5th defensive back, as the slot corner when Washington has 5 defensive backs on the field, i.e. is in nickel. Washington took Hudson in the 5th round of the 2020 NFL Draft out of Michigan. It is true that he barely played on defense last season. Hudson in the 2020 regular season played in 16 games, but on just 4.88% of Washington's defensive snaps. However, Hudson in the 2020 regular season did lead Washington in special team snaps at 81.96%, so he already brings value. And Khaleke Hudson offers, wait for it, position flex.
Position flex.
Yes, Ron, position flex. Khaleke Hudson at Michigan was similar to Isaiah Simmons at Clemson. Remember, going into the 2020 NFL Draft, a ton of hype for Isaiah Simmons off the hybrid linebacker, safety, corner role that he served for Clemson. Well, Hudson was Isaiah Simmons-like for Michigan in 2019, in that Hudson played all over the field. Per Pro Football Focus, Hudson in 2019 for Michigan had 371 snaps as a box safety, 210 snaps as a slot corner, 200 snaps as a defensive lineman, 52 snaps as a free safety, and 20 snaps as an outside corner. Hudson in 2019 started all 13 games for Michigan at the Viper position, which is a hybrid safety linebacker role, not unlike this Buffalo nickel spot. You know how much Ron loves guys with, yes, position flex.
Position flex.
Yes, exactly. Hudson very much offers position flex. Here was Ron on Monday on Khaleke Hudson getting some run at the Buffalo nickel spot.
The way teams are running offenses now, the sub packages are becoming more prevalent. And so we've got a lot of guys that we want to take a real good long look at. Khaleke is one of those guys that seems to deserve that opportunity. You know, last year we did it with Cam Curl. We put him in the Buffalo position. We've taken a look at Cam there. It's a defense that we played in Carolina when we had Shaq Thompson, and Khaleke fits that mold. And so we really want to take a long look at him. We've had Cam down there a couple of times as well. So we've worked probably 5 different combinations of players in that situation. And we'll see. Going into the preseason games, we'll probably take a good look at a couple of those guys and see if they get it, if they have a good feel for doing that.
I said this in episode 103 of the podcast when I gave you my 3 biggest training camp questions for the Washington football team at linebacker. Every year, there is a player who ends up being a pleasant surprise. Sometimes there are players who end up being a pleasant surprises. Guys, who aren't talked about a bunch going into a season, but guys who end up excelling in that season. Khaleke Hudson, to me, feels like a candidate to be one of those guys for Washington this coming season. I could very much see him taking a big step forward in 2021, both in terms of playing time and in terms of production. Let's talk quarterback. I mentioned Kyle Allen dealing with his tweaked left ankle. So camp on Monday was about Ryan Fitzpatrick and Taylor Heineke, more so than in any other training camp practice so far. Steven Montez got some additional work as well. How'd they look? Here was Ron.
I thought they did a nice job. I really did. They both had their moments. I think as you look at it, Fitz is getting more and more comfortable, and you see you see Taylor really just kind of picking up where he left off. There were a couple shots today of him moving around, making plays, and that's kind of what we expect from both of them. And then Steven took advantage of his opportunity to get a few more reps today. He's got a ways to go, but we like his talent. We like who he is as a young football player.
Yeah, Ron almost always makes it a point to mention Steven Montez. I don't know that that's indicative of anything, but whenever Ron gets asked about the quarterbacks, he does almost always invoke the name Steven Montez. I think when Ron talks about Steven as a developmental guy, I think Ron is legitimate when he says that. I think he does believe that there is something to Steven Montez. Now, what does that mean for Steven's future? Who knows? And we know that Washington is trying him out in this Taysom Hill-like role, so we'll see if he even, has a legit chance here of making the season opening roster. But that is notable. Ron frequently does bring up Steven Montez. So Washington football team training camp now is 7 days old. At what point do Ron's expectations for his quarterbacks rise in terms of comfort with pass catchers?
Well, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for when you start seeing that comfort zone where they can look at each other and get a feel and understanding of what they need to do to get themselves open, to be a target, and for Fitz and Taylor to be able to read that and know when to work towards them.
And speaking of pass catchers, a guy who can make a big impact in Washington's passing game, but really didn't last season, is Antonio Gibson. Will Gibson this coming season be the force in the passing game that we think he can be? A big-time topic at Washington football team training camp on Monday was Antonio Gibson, who spoke via post-training camp practice press conference, and for whom there is a lot of hype. Gibson has become a football analytics and fantasy football darling. People are anticipating big things from Gibson this coming season, of him having been one of the more efficient running backs in the NFL last season. His raw statistical totals don't necessarily blow you away, but some of the advanced stats do. Now, before we move any further, Gibson did provide an update on his turf toe, and the update was a positive one. So Gibson last December missed 2 consecutive games due to a turf toe injury that was suffered in the win at the Pittsburgh Steelers in Week 13. Gibson, in a Zoom press conference after Washington's OTA practice on June 2nd, said that he was still working through the turf toe injury and wasn't yet 100%. But this was Gibson on Monday on the turf toe.
It's been good. Just making sure I stay on top of it, treating it after practice. After the long days, it get kind of sore. But other than that, I'm fine out there. It's getting better, so, I feel fine.
All right, so good news there. He's not completely over the turf toe, but he seems to be close to being over the turf toe. Ron Rivera on Monday on where Gibson is at with his turf toe.
He seemed to have bounced back from that. It hampered him a little bit during OTAs and minicamp, but right now so far it's been really good, and we got to be smart and keep an eye on it.
3 stats to me capture how good Antonio Gibson was in his rookie season. A, and this is a raw stat, but Gibson finished the 2020 regular season with 1,045 scrimmage yards. He became just the 7th rookie in franchise history and the first since running back Alfred Morris in 2012 to have at least 1,000 scrimmage yards. B, Gibson finished the 2020 regular season number 6 among 47 qualified running backs in rushing DVOA per Football Outsiders at 18.7%. And C, Gibson in the 2020 regular season per Pro Football Focus gained positive yardage on 96.2% of his rushes, the highest such rate among qualified running backs in a season since 2012. And what makes all of that even more impressive is that Gibson was and is learning the running back position. How about this admission from Gibson on Monday?
Running back, I still have a lot to learn. So, I feel like running back is still, I'm taking my time with that. I get more into that than I do wide receiver. So, yeah, definitely. It's way, I feel like I got wide receiver a little more down packed than running back right now.
Yeah, so Gibson says that he still has a lot to learn at running back, even though Gibson last regular season rushed for 795 yards and 11 touchdowns on 4.68 yards per carry. Not bad for a guy who still has a lot to learn at running back. So Gibson at Memphis was a combo running back receiver. One of the things that Gibson was still learning last season was when to press holes as a running back. Ron Rivera on Monday on where Gibson is at in that regard.
He's getting a much better feel for it. You watched a couple times today. He went into the line. You could see a little stutter step, and his eyes went outside, and he made a cut. Now, he did do that again, and he shouldn't have cut. He should have pressed it a little bit longer. And it's one of those things that, again, he's going to continue to work at it, get that feel, but you're starting to see it come. And especially, like I said today, I saw a good glimpse of when he does do it the right way, it can create something.
And this was Gibson on Monday on knowing when to press holes, as there's a balance, right, that a running back has to strike between getting necessary yardage versus trying to set up the big run.
I'm learning that. I'm actually, it's kind of frustrating, but like I said, that goes with situation. Knowing when you need those 2 or 3 yards, just, get north. And sometimes when you can make a play happen, make a play happen. So it get frustrating sometimes, but I definitely, sometimes that get to me. But other than that, like I said, 3rd and short, you want to get down. If it's long, big time play, you feel like you can make it happen.
So what about the Christian McCaffrey comparison? Ron Rivera, of course, coached Christian McCaffrey during Ron's time as Carolina Panthers head coach. Ron, the night on which Washington took Gibson in the third round of the 2020 NFL Draft did not shy away from comparing Gibson to McCaffrey. Take it back to April 24th, 2020. Ron on the Gibson-McCaffrey comp, quote, "That's fair. He's a little bit bigger than Christian, but he's got a skill set like Christian. He's shown some position flexibility playing in the slot. Then he shows position flexibility playing in the backfield." End quote. So even back then on night 2 of the 2020 NFL Draft, we had Don Ron, talking up position flex.
Position flex.
Yes, Ron, position flex. Ron on Monday asked about Gibson potentially being McCaffrey-like for Washington.
Well, you watch him and just remembering what he did coming out of college, and you saw him line up as that wide receiver and beat linebackers and beat safeties and every now and then beat the nickel. So he's capable of that. We mix him up. You guys don't get to see it all, but some of the stuff that we do with him, is working towards creating that mismatch that you look for, that opportunity for us to put him somewhere and say, hey, we like what we got, let's go get it.
Well, and if Antonio Gibson is going to be Washington's version of Christian McCaffrey, two things really need to change regarding Gibson this upcoming season. And the two things have to do with how Washington utilizes Gibson. Number one, Washington needs to use him more as a pass catcher. And number two, Washington needs to use Gibson more on third downs. Antonio Gibson in the 2020 regular season was not utilized as much as he can be. And some of this is on Antonio Gibson. I will grant you that. So Gibson at Memphis, like I said, he was a combo running back receiver. But understand, Gibson in his final season at Memphis, 2019, averaged 19.3 yards per reception, 19.3 yards per catch. And yet Gibson in the 2020 regular season had just 36 receptions for 247 yards on 44 targets. For comparison's sake, J.D. McKissick in the 2020 regular season had 80 receptions for 589 yards and 2 touchdowns on 110 targets. McKissick was targeted 110 times. Gibson was targeted just 44 times. Now look, McKissick is a very good pass-catching running back, but you'd like to think that there will be more opportunity for Gibson as a pass catcher this coming season, given the upside in Antonio Gibson. Here was Ron on Monday on Gibson learning to be a pass catcher as a running back in the NFL.
Well, part of it is when he takes off on his route, the angles in which he takes the routes, and understanding that coming out of the backfield gives you a little bit more time to set up a move. But at the same time, you've got to, you just can't kind of launch yourself. You've got to get going. It's a little nuances that running backs, have been doing for a long time. For him, it's really only been last year. So he's got to understand that concept a little bit more. I think he appreciates the fact that he gets matched up on linebackers a little bit more as opposed to DBs.
And then with Gibson on third downs, so this really is something else. Antonio Gibson in the 2020 regular season, incredibly, had just 11 third down touches. That's it, 11 third down touches the entire regular season for Antonio Gibson. And it's not like these were non-productive third down touches. Gibson had 8 third down carries. The 8 third down carries totaled 55 yards and 2 touchdowns, 6.88 yards per carry. Gibson had 3 third down receptions. The 3 third down receptions totaled 47 yards, and the 3 third down receptions came on 3 targets. And it would be one thing if Washington's offense on third downs in the 2020 regular season was outstanding, but as you almost certainly know, that was not the case. Washington in the 2020 regular season was number 23 out of 32 NFL teams in third down efficiency at 39.11%. Now, regarding Gibson's lack of third down touches, Ron on Monday did hit on Gibson's lack of third down touches last season. Ron got asked about what Gibson becoming a true total package in terms of ball carrier and pass catcher would mean, and here's what Ron said.
Well, what'll happen is it'll increase his opportunities on third down situations for us. It'll also add to being able to do some different personnel groupings where, you can put him in there with 2 running backs, which we did last year. And now all of a sudden one of them splits out and one stays in the backfield. And depending on how the defense reacts, we'll run a certain play. So that's what it'll do for us. It'll open up the playbook a little bit more.
Antonio Gibson, to me, presents to Washington the chance to have something that the team hasn't had much of over the years, and that is a true dual threat running back. Chris Thompson was a true dual threat running back, but Chris Thompson was hurt a lot, and he wasn't utilized as a ball carrier all that much. I felt like Chris Thompson should have been used more as a ball carrier. But if you think about Washington's best running backs over the last, say, 40 years, all of them were essentially pure runners as opposed to dual threats. Alfred Morris, Clinton Portis, Stephen Davis, Terry Allen, Ernest Biner. Although I will say this for Biner, he in the 1989 regular season did have 54 receptions over 16 games. So in that season, Ernest Biner truly was a dual threat, but he never had more than 39 receptions in any of his other regular seasons with Washington. But you think about George Rogers, John Riggins. Joe Washington was a true dual threat running back for Washington for a few seasons in the early 1980s. Kelvin Bryant was a true dual threat running back for Washington for a few seasons in the late 1980s. But the list of true dual threat backs for Washington over the years really isn't that long. To me, the best pass-catching running backs for Washington in the Dan Snyder era have been Chris Thompson and Larry Centers, although Centers was a fullback, so I'm not sure if we even should count Larry Centers. But Chris Thompson was a legitimate dual threat running back. His 2017 season is one of the best seasons we've ever seen a Washington running back have in terms of pass catching, especially when you consider that Thompson that season did what he did over just 10 games. If you remember, Thompson that season suffered a season-ending fractured right fibula in that overtime loss at the New Orleans Saints in Week 11. But Thompson, over just 10 games, had 39 receptions for 510 yards and 4 touchdowns on 54 targets. He averaged 13.1 yards per reception. And Thompson, in that 2017 regular season, despite playing in just the 10 games, finished number 9 in the NFL in YAC at 483 per ESPN. Thompson also had a good pass-catching season in the 2016 regular season. 16 games, 49 receptions for 349 yards and 2 touchdowns on 62 targets. Larry Centers, to me, is so much fun to look at. Again, he was a fullback, but Larry Centers in 1999 and 2000, back-to-back big years as a pass-catching back. Centers in 99, and remember, that was an NFC East winning Washington team, right? The team went 10-6, won the division. Centers over 16 games that regular season, 69 receptions for 544 yards and 3 touchdowns on 90 targets. And then Centers in the 2000 regular season over 15 games, 81 receptions for 600 yards and 3 touchdowns on 93 targets. But going back to some of those pure backs who Washington has had in the Dan Snyder era, like Alfred Morris, he never had more than 17 receptions in a season over his 4 seasons with Washington, 2012 through 2015. Stephen Davis never had more than 33 receptions in a season over his 7 seasons with Washington, 1996 through 2002. Liddell Betts is kind of interesting. So Liddell Betts in the 2006 regular season over 16 games did have 53 receptions for 445 yards and a touchdown on 64 targets, but Betts didn't have more than 22 receptions in any of his other seasons with Washington, and Betts was here for a while, 2002 through 2009. So Antonio Gibson really has an opportunity to, A, greatly impact Washington's offense if he can take that next step as a pass-catching running back, but B, really stand out as something that Washington has not had much of over the years, and that is a true dual-threat running back, a true weapon in the backfield in terms of a guy who can be lethal both as a ball carrier and as a pass catcher.
You know, Liberty Mutual Insurance customizes car insurance so you only pay for what you need. You know what? Honestly, that's all we really want, fairness. We want it in sports, we want it in life. That's why all sports we love have rules. That's why we have offsides, so players don't float down the field or the ice and get cheap breakaways. That's why there are foul poles, sidelines, and out of bounds. In sports, the goal of fairness is built right in. Life doesn't work that way, as we all know, but Liberty Mutual is trying to make insurance work that way. That's what only paying for what you need is all about. And when you do that, you can also save a lot of money. So switch and save when you customize your car and home insurance with Liberty Mutual and only pay for what you need. What's more fair than that? Way to go, Liberty Mutual. This message was brought to you by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company. Visit libertymutual.com to learn more.
Well, another Washington football team player who spoke on Monday via post-training camp practice press conference was William Jackson III. Now, one of my top 3 training camp questions for the Washington football team at corner that I discussed in episode 104 of the podcast was, do we get any indications that more man coverage is coming? Washington's pass defense last regular season ended up being great. Yes, the pass defense struggled in the loss to Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the wild card game, but Washington as a team last regular season was excellent against the pass. Number 2 in the NFL in pass defense for Football Outsiders DVOA metric, and Washington last regular season was number 6 in the NFL in third down defense. And yes, a good chunk of that did have to do with Washington playing a less than stellar cast of quarterbacks as the season went on. But still, Washington against the pass last regular season was really good, so much better than what we saw in the 2019 regular season. And Washington did what it did in the 2020 regular season, playing a lot of zone coverage. Washington's secondary last regular season per Football Outsiders played man coverage just 24% of the time. That ranked 25th in the NFL in terms of highest usage of man coverage. A man who thrived in this system, right, was Ronald Darby. He ended up being healthy and great last season. His lone season with Washington got himself a big money free agent contract with the Denver Broncos this past March. Washington, of course, spent good money to sign William Jackson III as an unrestricted free agent this past March. He is known for excelling in man coverage. And so are we going to see more man coverage in 2021, especially given that Jack Del Rio, during his time as Denver Broncos defensive coordinator, used man coverage quite a bit? Jack was the Broncos defensive coordinator from 2012 through 2014. The Broncos NFL rankings in total defense per DVOA in those regular seasons, number 5 in 2012, number 15 in 2013, number 4 in 2014. So top 5 in 2 or 3 seasons. So given that, given what Jackson can do, given potentially what someone like Benjamin St-Juste can do, and given that it's not like Kendall Fuller and Jimmy Moreland are incapable of playing man coverage, it has felt like we're going to see more man coverage from Washington this coming season. And in fact, Jack indicated as much in a conversation with Julie Donaldson of the Washington football team on WashingtonFootball.com back in May. However, William Jackson III on Monday may have let the cat out of the bag. And the cat isn't what we were expecting. Jackson on Monday on what has been the biggest adjustment for him with Jack Del Rio's defense.
It's more zone. You know, I came from a kind of man system. So with the zone, I'm just getting comfortable on where guys need to be, like linebackers, safeties, and knowing where they need to be and what I need to do to make plays in the defense.
All right, so William Jackson III flat out says, quote, "It's more zone," end quote. You wonder if old Jackie Del Rio is thrilled that William Jackson III said that in his post-practice press conference on Monday. Now, that certainly doesn't mean that Washington this coming season will, exclusively play zone. No team does that. What Jackson said doesn't even mean that Washington this coming season will mostly play zone. Maybe Jackson was purposely trying to throw us off. But that stood out to me, of Jack Del Rio having suggested that more man coverage from Washington for this coming season is likely, of just logic suggesting that more man coverage from Washington for this coming season is likely. Maybe Washington's defense is going to continue to primarily feature zone coverage. I mean, that was a staple of Ron Rivera's Carolina Panthers defenses. I mean, there is no right answer. Zone can work. Man coverage can work. All that matters is that you're good against the pass, because as much as people love to talk about stopping the run, nothing on defense matters more than stopping the pass. This is a passing league. You are doomed if you're bad against the pass. But I do find things like this interesting, right? The strategery of football.
Strategery.
Yes, the strategery. What is the best deployment for this current crop of Washington defensive backs? And it sounds like, if you go by what William Jackson III said on Monday, that zone coverage may still be the primary way for the Washington football team secondary in the 2021 season. Well, here's how whacked out the national season has become. There was confusion on Monday night regarding what the final score of the game was. Was it 6-5 or 7-5? The confusion had to do with the Philadelphia Phillies run scoring on a double play for the second and third outs in the top of the ninth, what was a 5-run Phillies ninth. The run counted. It scored before the double play was complete. And so, yes, 7-5 was the final as the Nats lost game 1 of a 4-game series against the Phillies at Nationals Park. Nats now are 49-57 on the season. But I don't know that I've ever seen that mass confusion at the end of a baseball game over what was the final score. That happens all of the time in basketball games, right? Because you have end of game shots that may or may not count, but that doesn't happen often in baseball. But whether the final score was 7-5 or 6-5, the final score should have been 3-2. More on that in a bit. But the headline item from this 7-5 Nats loss to the Phillies at Nationals Park on Monday night, aside from the praying mantis on the cap of Victor Robles, boy, did that become a big thing on social media, was the Nationals debut of Josiah Gray. And we're now into a portion of the Nationals season that's a lot like where the Orioles have been all of this season and, truth be told, all of recent seasons. And that is, it's not about the outcomes of games anymore. It's much more about the process of these games. It's much more about individual performances in these games. And Josiah Gray's performance is what mattered the most from Monday night. Now, you could argue it didn't really matter what he did in this game because you weren't going to write the guy off as a prospect if he struggled, and that's true. But it was really good to see Josiah Gray do well in his Nationals debut. Josiah Gray on Monday night in his Nats debut allowed 1 run in 5 innings. He was not lights out. This was not the Steven Strasburg Major League debut of June 2010, but this was a good, solid first step as a Washington National. Josiah Gray gave up just 4 hits, a solo homer, and 3 singles. He issued 2 walks. He did have just 2 strikeouts, but he threw 47 strikes versus 24 balls on 71 pitches. The Nats acquired Gray and catcher Keibert Ruiz from the Los Angeles Dodgers as the headline prospects in a crop of 4 prospects for, of course, Max Scherzer and Trey Turner in a trade that was finalized this past Friday. Gray, as of Monday, per MLB Pipeline, was the Nats' number 2 prospect and the number 41 overall prospect in baseball. Now, Gray had pitched in the majors already this season. He made his major league debut earlier this season, and he had actually had some struggles with the Dodgers. He had 8 innings over 2 games, including 1 start with LA, allowed 6 runs, gave up 4 homers, although he also totaled 13 strikeouts. Gray looked good on Monday night. Perfect top of the first, struck out Gene Segura on 5 pitches, including a 95.3 mile per hour 4-seam fastball for a swinging strike 3. Gray tossed scoreless 3rd and 4th innings despite allowing 2 runners on base in each inning. He, in the scoreless top of the 4th, issued a leadoff 4-pitch walk of Bryce Harper and then gave up a first-pitch single to JT Realmuto, but Gray then recorded 3 consecutive outs. Gray allowed a run in the top of the 5th on a leadoff full-count homer by Odubel Herrera. Gray, in the inning, also issued a 2-out 4-pitch walk of Gene Segura. Look, Josiah Gray, he was not perfect, he was not dominant, but he was effective. He worked quickly, he worked efficiently, he threw strikes, and ultimately, the run prevention was there. 1 run in 5 innings. I thought Davey Martinez pulled Josiah Gray at just the right time. Get out while the getting's still good. Josiah Gray gave a post-game press conference in which I thought he did a nice job, looked poised, gave smart answers. There's a lot to like about Josiah Gray. Now, he's made 1 start for the Nationals, okay? So we're not here to crown the guy the Nats' successor to Max Scherzer. Let's see what happens. But good job by Josiah Gray on Monday night. And think about this. How often do teams sell off the way the Nats just sold off and then immediately get to see one of the prized pickups in the sell-off at the major league level? Like, usually the way this works is you sell off and then you don't get to see any of those prospects for at least a few years, right? Or at least a season. In this case, the sell-off was completed on Friday. Josiah Gray made his Nats debut on Monday night. That's a pretty unique scenario. And it wasn't just Josiah Gray who made his Nats debut on Monday night. Mason Thompson made his Nats debut on Monday night as well. So the Nats got Mason Thompson from the San Diego Padres in the Daniel Hudson trade. This was a trade that was made very early Friday morning. The Nats dealt Hudson to the Padres for Thompson and infielder Jordy Barley. Thompson was the Padres' number 9 prospect per MLB Pipeline. This guy is tall. This guy is a flamethrower. This guy got into some trouble on Monday night, but he ultimately ended up being effective. Thompson tossed a scoreless top of the 6th despite giving up back-to-back two-out singles to Alec Boehm and Didi Gregorius, and then issuing a two-out four-pitch walk of Odubel Herrera. But Thompson then struck out pinch hitter Rhys Hoskins on 3 pitches. So good to see that Mason Thompson ultimately got the job done, did a nice job in his Nats debut. It's funny how this worked out. Josiah Gray and Mason Thompson back-to-back. Josiah starting the game, Mason relieving Josiah, make their Nats debuts off having just been acquired by the Nats this past Friday. So, with the Nats bullpen on Monday night, that was a bit of a problem, that bullpen. 5 Nats relievers in this game ultimately combined to allow 6 runs in 4 innings. You know, through 6 innings, things looked good, and then everything fell apart. Sam Clay, in what ended up being a Phillies 1-run 7th inning, faced 3 batters, but got just 1 out. He retired the first batter he faced, but then issued a 1-out 7-pitch walk of Gene Segura, and then gave up a 1-out full-count double to our old pal, Bryce Harper. Andres Machado then came into the game. He and that Phillies 1-run 7th issued a 1-out run-scoring wild pitch with the bases loaded to allow an inherited runner to score for a 2-1 Phillies lead. Then came one of my favorite Nats now, Gabe Klobosits, the 6'7", 270-pound, stirrups-wearing reliever who the Nats took in the 36th round in the 2017 MLB draft. Klobo, as he's known. Klobo tossed a perfect top of the 8th on 4 pitches. He looked great. I mean, you talk about efficiency. A perfect inning on 4 pitches. That's about as good as it can get, right? I mean, I guess a perfect inning on 3 pitches is as good as it can get, but that's close. A perfect inning on 4 pitches. Klobo looks the part. He acted the part with that 4-pitch perfect top of the 8th inning. I was all ready to anoint Gabe Klobosits, a.k.a. Klobo, as Klobo Cop, and then came the top of the 9th inning. Now, Kyle Finnegan, who has graduated into being the Nats' new closer with both Hudson and Brad Hand gone, had been used a ton lately. So Kyle Finnegan was not available on Monday night. So Davey Martinez had Gabe Klobosits start the top of the 9th inning. But old Klobo was a no-go in that inning. He gave up back-to-back singles, then got pulled from the game. And who did Davey go to? Not Ryan Harper, who actually has been sneaky effective for the Nationals this season. Not Jeffrey Rodriguez, who Davey just cannot stand to use. That's as clear as can be. Davey went to Wander Suero, the Rex Grossman of the Nationals bullpen. 50-50 Suero. Sometimes he's good, but sometimes he's not so good. And Suero, not so good in this game on Monday night. He came into the game in the top of the 9th with no outs, runners on first and second, and the Nats nursing a 3-2 lead. He gave up a game-tying opposite field RBI double to the right center field gap to the first batter he faced, Gene Segura. Suero then issued an intentional walk to Bryce Harper to load the bases. Suero then gave up a full-count 2-run single to JT Realmuto for a 5-3 Phillies lead, despite him having been down in the count at one point, 0-2. Suero then gave up a 1-out RBI single to Alec Boehm for a 6-3 Phillies lead, and then a 5th Phillies run in that 9th inning scored on an inning-ending double play. The run scored before the double play was completed. Wander Suero was a mess in this game. The Nationals bullpen as a whole ended up being a mess in this game. Again, Klobosits and Suero combined to give up 5 runs in that top of the 9th inning. Now, again, it's not really about the outcomes of these games anymore for the Nationals. The Nats have tapped out on this season from a standpoint of devoting assets to this season. The players are still trying. Davey Martinez and his staff, most of which remains out due to COVID-19, are still trying. But it's not about wins and losses anymore for the Nationals, even though they're going to remain relevant in the National League East standings just because the division is so bad. So if you're a Nats fan, I mean, I wouldn't be that upset about what happened in the top of the 9th on Monday night. But yeah, it was ugly. That was not pretty, what ended up going down. As far as the Nationals offense on Monday night, Nats scored 5 runs on 6 hits and 4 walks, went 1 of 4 with runners in scoring position. The Nats' first 3 runs came via pinch hits. Andrew Stevenson had a 1-out pinch solo homer to right field in the bottom of the 6th to tie the game at 1. And then Ryan Zimmerman delivered. He came up to pinch hit with 1 out, the bases loaded in the bottom of the 7th inning. And he came through, punched a pinch 1-out 2-run seeing eye single through the left side of the infield for a 3-2 Nats lead. You know, Zimmerman had been really bad this season as a pinch hitter, even with that hit, and that was a big hit, and the crowd went nuts at Nationals Park. Zimmerman on the season now has the following slash line as a pinch hitter. This is, again, even with what he did on Monday night. Batting average of 139, on-base percentage of 139, slugging percentage of 278. He has not done well as a pinch hitter, but he did do well in that spot on Monday night. Good to see that. We also had Carter Kieboom do well offensively on Monday night. The Nationals youth movement continued. Victor Robles was back out there, starting center fielder, leadoff batter. Carter Kieboom was back out there, starting third baseman, number 6 batter. Kieboom went 2 for 4 with a 2-run homer and a single. He smacked a 2-run homer on a bomb to left field in the bottom of the 9th inning. The homer going a projected 423 feet per Statcast. Kieboom had a broken bat single in the Nats' 2-run 7th inning. Luis Garcia remained as the Nationals starting shortstop. He was a number 7 batter, but went 0 for 4 in the game. Also, Yadiel Hernandez had another good game for the Nationals. Now, he's an older guy, but Yadiel, off that great performance in the Nationals' 6-5 walk-off win over the Chicago Cubs at Nationals Park on Sunday afternoon, 4 for 5 with 2 solo homers, including a walk-off homer, an RBI single, another single, and a nice defensive play. Yadiel back out there on Monday night, starting left fielder and number 5 batter, 1 for 3 with a single, a walk, and an outfield assist. And the outfield assist was one of the plays of the game, a great throw to gun down Bryce Harper at home for the final out in the Phillies' 1-run 7th inning on an inning-ending double play off Yadiel catching a Brad Miller full-count flyout for the second out. The hit for Yadiel was a good-looking leadoff opposite field single to left field in the Nats' 2-run 7th, and Yadiel had a leadoff walk in the Nats' 2-run 9th inning. Game 2 for the Nats against the Phillies at Nationals Park Tuesday night at 7:05. Patrick Corbin versus Zach Wheeler. There are many things to be tracking for the Nationals as this season plays out. Among them, to me, is what goes down with Corbin. Now, look, he's not going anywhere, okay? This is year 3 of a 6-year, $140 million contract. But he has been a disaster so far this season, off having been really bad last season. It would be nice if Patrick Corbin somehow got on track the rest of this season. Corbin, over 20 starts this season, has an ERA of 5.78, has a whip of 147. His last start came in that 11-8 8-inning loss at the Phillies in Game 2 of a doubleheader split last Thursday afternoon. He allowed 4 runs in 5 innings. He at one point allowed 3 home runs over the course of 4 batters. He has got to be better. He is paid to be a lot better than, again, an ERA of 5.78. Let's see if he can be better over the course of the rest of this season. All right, so as the Orioles continue along this path of rebuilding, as the O's are in the midst of continuing to tank, a process that, as you likely know, I fully endorse, I must admit to you that there still is an opponent who I do root for the O's to beat, and to beat soundly. I don't root against the O's, but I certainly don't mind when they lose right now. They're better off losing right now in the midst of the rebuilding and the tanking. But I make an exception when the O's play the New York Yankees. I despise the New York Yankees. The New York Yankees are part of my sports axis of hate. It is the New York Yankees, the Dallas Cowboys, and the Duke Blue Devils. From a sports standpoint, I will forever hate those 3 teams. And so seeing what we saw on Monday night, I must say, put a smile on my face. A 7-1 Orioles win at the Yankees in Game 1 of a 3-game series as the Orioles were back in the win column.
And the Orioles again in the win column.
Yes, they were, Joe Angel, and the O's, believe it or not, now have won 10 of their last 15 games. Although the O's do still have the worst record in the American League at 38-67. The Texas Rangers improved to 39-67, a 4-1 win over the Los Angeles Angels. So even with 10 wins in 15 games, the O's still have the worst record in the AL. Again, the O's are a rebuilding and tanking team. But this was a nice win. In fact, Orioles manager Brandon Hyde, after the game, called the win, quote, our most complete game of the year in all phases, end quote. And how about the job done by Jorge Lopez? You know, Jorge Lopez really has become a fan favorite over the last few weeks with what he revealed recently. Lopez, in a post-game press conference on July 17th, revealing that he had gone on the bereavement list due to his son having received a bone marrow transplant as his son was undergoing chemotherapy. I mean, just a heartbreaking story. He has not had a good season, as we've talked about. Lopez came into the game last night with an ERA of 6.19 and a whip of 168 over 21 starts this season. And yet, what did Jorge Lopez do on Monday night? He teased a no-hitter. Jorge Lopez at the mighty Yankees tossed 5 no-hit innings before giving up a full-count leadoff double to Joey Gallo in the bottom of the sixth. Lopez allowed 1 run in 6 innings. Now, he did issue 5 walks, a balk, and a hit by pitch. So he was far from dominant, but 1 run in 6 innings. You take that and run with it if you're Jorge Lopez this year. He only gave up just that 1 hit, and he had 4 strikeouts. So really cool to see Jorge Lopez do as he did. And then there was the Orioles offense in this win at the Yankees on Monday night. The O's scored 7 runs despite going 0 for 11 with runners in scoring position. How often do you see something like that? A team scoring 7 runs despite going 0 for 11 with runners in scoring position. The Yankees, by the way, also went 0 for 11 with runners in scoring position. But how about what the O's did to the Yankees starting pitcher, Andrew Heaney? Poor Andrew Heaney. The O's smashed 4 solo homers off Heaney, who now has an ERA of 5.42 on the season and now has given up 20 home runs on the season. Cedric Mullins and Austin Hayes hit back-to-back 2-out solo homers in the Orioles' 2-run third. Mullins also had a single in the game. Ryan Mountcastle smashed a first-pitch leadoff homer in the Orioles' 2-run fourth. He also had a double and a single in the game. And Ramon Urias blasted a 1-out solo homer in the Orioles' 2-run fourth inning. So it was a feel-good night for the Birds. They have not had many of these over the last few seasons, but we did get one of them on Monday night. Game 2 for the O's at the Yankees, Tuesday night at 7:05. Alexander Wells is starting for the O's. Garrett Cole was supposed to start for the Yankees, but Yankees manager Aaron Boone revealed after the Orioles win at the Yankees on Monday night that Cole has tested positive for COVID-19. So the Yankees now are dealing with that. All right, my friends, that will do it for you and me for now. Keep the feedback coming. You can tweet me at Al Galdi. You can email me, the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Wednesday's installment of the podcast, episode 115, will feature everything that you need to know about the Washington football team, especially with us on Tuesday having the first padded practice of 2021 Washington football team training camp. The violence is being taken to another level. We'll discuss whatever goes down with the Wizards and NBA free agency, as well as we all remain on Spencer Dinwiddie watch. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. I'll talk to you on Wednesday.
Strategery. What's the worst thing about selling your home? Probably all the times you'll have to scramble for a last-minute showing and somehow clean the dishes, pick up your kids' toys, make all the beds, and get out of the house in an hour. Sounds exhausting. That's not the case when you buy and sell a home with Orchard. They'll help you buy and move into your new place first, and then Orchard will take care of all the showings on your old house. That's right. You're already in your new house. No crazy last-minute scrambling. Take a look and see how Orchard can help you at Orchard.com and get started with a no-cost, no-obligation offer. That's Orchard.com.